Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today at our latest City Club Forum. My name is Ralph Delarada, and it is my pleasure to serve as the current president of the City Club of Cleveland. Established in October of 1912, the City Club continues to bring the highest caliber of accomplished individuals to our city year after year. These guests, rich in experience and knowledge, are here to spur discussion and learning amongst the citizens of Cleveland. Today's guest will most certainly fill that role. Few individuals have as thorough an understanding of the relationship between Middle Eastern affairs and U.S. politics as founder and president of the Arab American Institute, Dr. James J. Zogby. Dr. Zogby joins us today to touch on U.S. Middle East policy in light of the upcoming presidential election, a topic with deep implications for the future of our nation. Dr. Zogby has been involved with Arab American issues for over 30 years, starting with his 1977 co-founding of the Palestine Human Rights Campaign. His career from then forward demanded continual examination of these important issues, as he helped found the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee in 1980 and Save Lebanon, Inc. in 1982. Furthermore, throughout the 90s, Dr. Zogby worked with Vice President Al Gore to promote the development of the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and also worked with former U.S. Congressman Mel Levine to close the 1994 Israeli-Palestinian agreement in Cairo. Beyond Middle Eastern affairs, Dr. Zogby has extensive U.S. political experience. In addition to serving as a senior advisor to Jesse Jackson's 1984 and 1988 presidential campaigns, Dr. Zogby has held high-ranking positions in the National Democratic Ethnic Coordinating Committee and the Democratic National Committee, where he is appointed to the Executive Committee and is co-chair of the Resolutions Committee. As a result of his international reputation, Dr. Zogby's opinions have been sought by Congress, the U.S. Department of State, and the United Nations. In connection with his Distinguished Public Service Award, the Department of State credits Dr. Zogby with, quote, outstanding contributions to national and international affairs. His current work with Middle East policy and politics is complemented by his positions as a board member of Human Rights Advocate Middle East Watch, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and an advisory board member of the American Civil Liberties Union. Married and the father of 5, and I also understand a number of grandchildren as well, Dr. Zogby holds an undergraduate degree and honorary Doctor of Laws degree from Lemoyne College, as well as a doctorate from Temple University's Department of Religion. I am honored to introduce such a distinguished individual to this week's City Club Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the City Club Dr. James Zogby.
Thank you all very much. The topic I'm going to speak to you about today it's called The Stakes Have Never Been Higher, and it's about the U.S. elections and how we should, but I'm afraid may not, debate the issues of the Middle East in this election. I was here 4 years ago in Cleveland. In the middle of the last presidential election, I spoke to you about a topic. I called it then The Mess We're In, How Our Leaders Failed Us in the Middle East. What I noted then was that despite decades of engagement in the Middle East on so many levels, from the amount of foreign aid we send, the weapons we provided, the troops we send into the region going back to the 1950s, the number of times we've been engaged in warfare there, the lives that we'd lost, the interests that we have, and the relationships that we've developed. Despite all of this, we as a country have so little understanding of the Middle East, of its history, of its people, of its evolution in the last century. And as a result of that, we shaped our foreign policy in the region not on the region's requirements and our interests, but rather on a distorted amalgam of our interests and domestic politics and a kind of a collection of pretty strange ideologies. As a result, we found ourselves in 2004, and we find ourselves still today in a very deep hole. In 2004, we ignored reality and found ourselves engaged in conflicts about which we had, as I said, so little understanding. We were ground down in a war in Iraq and couldn't figure out what went wrong. Back then, we were blaming the problem on what we call dead-enders, or an array of other factors that all of which we said accounted for the problem, certainly not us. But these were disingenuous cop-outs. I debated a number of the architects of the war before we went into it. I was in the Council on Foreign Relations, and we had a working group. I, like our president, had a chance to look them in the eye and see their souls, and I believed that they believed what they were saying. I mean, they said it would take 7 days and it'd be over. 6 months and we'd be out. It was going to be a slam dunk that we'd find the weapons, and it would only cost us about $1 billion to maybe $2 billion, and then Iraqi oil would click in and everything would be done, and democracy would bloom, and the flowers in the streets, and the Middle East would be transformed. Didn't work. And instead of acknowledging this or even understanding it and admitting it and correcting course, they compensated for their failure both by denial and then by dumbing down the definition of victory. So victory didn't become that, it became purple fingers or something else, none of which had anything to do with reality, but kind of made them feel good, at least until the next disaster. By 2004, it was clear we were in a hole and we didn't know how to get out. At the same time, we were overseeing a failed Middle East peace process, tragic consequences there as well. We were increasingly disliked in the Middle East. Our polling showed, and personal anecdote made clear, that Americans were in trouble in the Middle East. We were placing ourselves and our allies at great risk. The question in 2004 I asked was, would we have a national debate that confronted our failed policies? Would we change direction, or would we continue to dig the hole deeper? Well, we did not change, we did not debate, and the hole got deeper. 4 years later, we find that the tragedies have been compounded. The people of the region and ourselves are at greater risk. 2005, 2006 were especially disastrous years. Instead of focusing on al-Qaeda that attacked us, our failed policies resulted in us abandoning Afghanistan, where today the Taliban, instead of being defeated, is resurgent. Al-Qaeda is now repositioning itself from Pakistan, placing that country at risk and Afghanistan. The movement that we once sought to defeat has now metastasized and now finds itself, we now find it in Lebanon, we find confronting it in North Africa, we find it in Europe, and we find it having grown. The Palestinian situation that we continue to say could never get worse does get worse. Israel's unilateral withdrawal from Gaza did not make the situation better because they did not negotiate with responsible leadership. Instead, they abandoned the Palestinian leadership and said, we're doing this our own way, you pick up the pieces. What happened was Hamas, in fact, picked up the pieces. Hamas's victory in legislative elections that should never have occurred, but we were so ideologically committed to having elections at any cost that we imposed the situation, resulted in them winning. And beyond verbal statements and embraces that sometimes hurt more than they help, what we've done with the Palestinian leadership is literally abandon them as well. So today we find the Palestinian people divided physically and ideologically into two divergent camps.